Hi there everyone, Josiah here with Womprat Creations, and I have a bit of an announcement before we get into the build today. My wife and I have been put on a 2-week quarantine in the house, so we cannot leave. We're both feeling fine, but we may have come into contact with someone who tested positive for COVID, so to be safe, we're staying at home for 2 weeks. We've gotten a test done, and we're waiting to hear back on the results, but we're both feeling fine. As a precaution, I did close down the store on the website, and so once I know that everything is good to go, we're both fine, and there's no, everything's kosher, I'll open the store back up. But for right now, the store is closed, and I'm stuck at home for 2 weeks, which is great because I get to spend a lot of time in the shop, but it also poses an issue of I'm stuck with whatever materials I have on hand. And while it may seem like I have a bunch of materials on hand, you find very quickly when you actually start taking stock of what you have, you just don't have everything that you might want on hand. So going forward, that might be something that I pay more attention to. But the nice thing about this is it gives me an opportunity to do the one material that I do have a good supply of is model making stuff. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot of model making over these next 2 weeks, which I'm super excited about. I love model making. So for today's build, it is going to be a speed build where I'm going to be doing all of the work beforehand and just focus on that, and then I'll go in after and do a voiceover for you guys explaining what it is that I'm doing. But I realized that after all of the model making stuff that I've taken you guys through, I haven't really taken you guys through just building a model kit, just buying a kit and building exactly what the kit is for. I've shown you guys Frankensteining pieces of kit together to create something different, but today I wanted to do something a little different. And to be honest, I don't know how this video is going to go because I don't know how exciting I can make this process. But for you model enthusiasts out there, hopefully you get something from this. You'll get to see how I go through building a model kit. And I'm super excited about the model kit that I'm going to be doing. I am going to be building the Bondi 1/48 scale ATST from Return of the Jedi. And Bondi makes beautiful kits. I'm really excited to be putting this together. This is not an expensive kit. You guys, if you wanted to, could go out and buy this kit and build it with me through this video. I will try to pass along any tips or tricks that I might utilize for this. But I'm super excited to get into this. It should be a lot of fun. And like I said, hopefully I can make this a somewhat interesting video. So let's get to the build. All right, so with model kits like this, these big pieces that have all kinds of pieces within them are called part trees. And different kits will have them labeled differently, but they'll all be labeled. A certain part tree will be labeled. So in this case, with this model kit, they are labeled with letters. So there's an A part tree, B, C, and so on. So the first thing I did was I laid them out in descending order just so that it was easy for me to reach for the correct one when I was going through making the kit. This isn't exactly necessary, but I mean it helped me a little bit without having to go searching too deeply. On the part trees right next to the individual parts there will be letters, so when you're going through the directions it'll be labeled. In this kit's case it was like A32 or B7, and that makes the parts fairly easy to identify. The nice thing about this kit is that you don't need any kind of glue. I end up using a little bit of weld-on for a few things, but it's not necessary. These are all snap-on pieces. So this is actually a pretty nice beginner kit. So I'm going through using some flush cutters to cut off the pieces. Make sure that when you're cutting your pieces off of the tree, you're paying attention to where they need to be cut. Sometimes it isn't the most obvious where the part tree ends and the part begins. So make sure that you're really carefully looking at the picture of the piece, that way you don't accidentally cut off a detail piece. Now this was the only parts that, and I'll do it again here in a little bit, but the only parts that I used weld-on for were the small wires that were in here. The small, I mean, they're not real wires, but they're the small coil pieces that just, I mean, they're really cool detail pieces, but I wasn't exactly, I just wanted to make sure that they weren't going anywhere. Those pieces didn't have a really nice click when I put them in. So I put just a little bit of weld-on the coil detail pieces. You can see that I'm getting close to being done with this leg here, and one thing that you want to make sure that you do is when you have a finished piece like this leg, you compare it to the final picture of that piece in the model kit, just to make sure that you didn't miss any tiny piece in there. It's usually pretty easy to be able to look at your piece and compare it to the drawing and make sure that everything's there. Oh, okay, so this ended up not exactly going the way I wanted, but I'm getting to the pieces that are the inside cockpit of the walker, and whenever I'm putting together a model kit, I'm always trying to be aware of what the best order of operations is as far as paint goes. And for stuff like this where it's on the inside of the model, it's best to paint it before you assemble the whole thing. That way you can actually get to everything. I ended up not really needing to do this because once I assembled the model, everything was together. But this right here is a cool thing I did want to point out to you guys. For these really tiny pieces that could be a pain to paint, I painted everything a base dark gray. Then I'm putting some Rub and Buff on a Q-tip and I'm lightly going over the surface of these control panels. That leaves just paint on the raised pieces, so just the detailed buttons and stuff like that. This is a really easy, quick way to take care of some of this small detail paint work. like I said, I ended up not needing to do this. No one is gonna know it's in there except for you and me, because we're watching it get done right now. But this is a really quick and easy way to take care of that small paint work. Now I'm going through and just doing some light weathering on the inside. I mean, I put a little too much effort into this, these inside pieces to find out that you don't really get to see them at all. But that's okay. I got to show you guys a cool rub and buff technique of, I mean, it just makes things a little easier, especially if you're not trying to spend too much time on that section. Using some more weld on for the small rail on the top of the head of the walker, just because those small thin pieces, I really wanted to make sure that they were locked in. So you could follow up every seam in this if you wanted to with some weld on or CA glue, but it's not really necessary. The only pieces that, I mean, they probably didn't even need it, but just those really thin plastic pieces, I didn't want them going anywhere. Here's some more of those coils on the bottom. And this is where I discovered that you don't get to see the inside of the walker head. I realized all of that painting was for nothing, but that's all right. I will say that these little side turret things were actually a little fragile putting together. You want to be careful when you're assembling those, both the one in the front of the walker head and the ones that come out the side. The ones that come out the side were the real fragile ones that I almost broke. I think I ended up having to use some weld on to repair a piece, but just be really careful when you're putting these pieces together. They're very thin, don't take much to snap. But if you do, you can always put them back together with a little dot of CA glue, or yeah, here's the weld on that I used. Alright, so I decided to use the base color of the plastic as the base color for my walker because it's a pretty close match. If you're gonna do that, make sure that you use acrylics to weather. I'm using an oil-based wash with a couple different colors, but they're oil-based, and whatever kind of plastic Bondi uses for their kits actually does not meld well with oil. You'll see later on that I get a couple cracks in the plastic because the thinner in my oil washes was enough to degrade the integrity of the plastic. So if you're going to use oil paint, you can, but put on like a coat of clear coat or a coat of primer would be fine. But if you want to use the base color of the plastic, just use acrylic paints on top of it. That'll make things a lot easier. Now I'm going through and doing some weathering with my airbrush, and this is where I really started to bring this this model into scale. So I took a couple of things like some darker grays and some grime colors. I think I even put a little bit of brown in there in some areas, just places that you think would be dirty. I also gave some areas just a general misting. This is something cool that I haven't talked to you guys about before. This green stuff in the foreground here is called flocking, and it is a model maker's tool that is used to replicate vegetation, specifically like grass or moss. So basically you put down a little bit of glue, you sprinkle some flocking on. I'm also adding a little bit of green color in some areas with some paint just to give it a little more substance, but I end up backing it up with more flocking afterwards, and I'll show you guys a close-up here in a little bit. Yeah, see, there's the glue. Spread it out just a little bit. You don't want it all over the place, just in the places you want the flocking to stick. There. There you can see that cool flocking. Gives it a nice texture like actual grass. And then you can see the crack in the front head of the walker. There should be a better shot of it here in a second, but I mean, you can see the paint job actually turned out fairly nicely on this, but when it goes to the front of the head, you'll be able to see this big crack right down the center of it. There it is. Look at that ugly thing. That's from using oil paint, so just be cognizant of that. All right, you guys, I'm done. This was a really fun little model to put together, and I actually did this whole thing in one day, which is a rarity in this shop. I'm not a particularly fast worker on most of my builds, but this one was pretty quick. As long as you take your time going through, I mean, I know, you know, the assembly, I just couldn't think of a way to make the assembly super entertaining. Because it really is just step by step. You're going through the instructions, and Bondi's instructions are really well laid out in almost a Lego-like fashion. You could get away with not reading anything and just looking at the pictures, which makes it really easy. But make sure that you take your time going through, because there are, I mean, like I said, there were a few parts in here that if I was going too fast, I would have messed it up, and it would have been a pain to fix. But like I said, it was a really fun little model, and I'm actually really pleased with the paint job on this, which, excuse me, I wasn't sure how the paint job was going to turn out on this, because I did decide to go with the just the plastic color that the kit came with as the base, but I think it came out really nicely. Yeah, just all around a nice, fun little model. Hopefully you guys got something of value out of this video. And if anything, I hope it inspired you to go pick up some model kits, because it is a really fun hobby that you can pick up, and I'm fearful that it's on its way out. So make sure that if you are if you got any kind of interest from this video, go pick up a kit. Even if you can't find any kits that are super exciting, or maybe you want one that just seems like it might be a little too much, pick up a little car kit, or even this. This was a super easy kit. It didn't require any kind of crazy skills to put together. I really didn't even need to use, excuse me, any kind of glue. The few times that I did use my weld on was just kind of because I tend to be a little rough with the things in my shop, and they tend to, after they sit for a while, they get bumped and fall and stuff like that. So That was just for my own personal assurance. You could put this whole thing together without any glue and it would turn out fine. So yeah, doesn't need any crazy skills. But if you have been on the fence on whether you would want to get into modeling or not, just go pick up a kit. It's super easy and they're really cheap. So even if you don't end up finishing the kit, you just got a bunch of greeblies for other stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in for this week's Scratch Build Speed Build. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Let me ask you something. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to go and travel around a galaxy far, far away? I think it would be, but unfortunately, our technology does not allow us to do that yet. But you could pretend like you have. And the way you do that, I mean, what do you do when you go to visit a new place? You pick up a t-shirt that says that you were there. So you can go back home and wear it at the office and let people know that you're well-traveled. Now you can do that for the Star Wars universe too. We have a couple different t-shirts, but this newest one is probably my favorite. This is a Visit Civilized Endor t-shirt. And like I said, this one is probably my favorite one yet. And any one that you buy really helps us out with being able to produce cool content for you guys. So thank you guys for your support.
517 to scanner control. 517 to scanner control. 316, report to control. 53 to upper bay door. 53 to upper bay door.